Ready to go.
Welcome everybody to the regular Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. Is there a motion to open the meeting? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee DeRozzi, all in favor? The meeting is officially open. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I will do things a little differently today, and I will move it up to the courtesy of the floor. So remember what I said, if you could limit yourself to 3 minutes each, I'd appreciate it. When you do go up to the microphone, please give your name, your address, and you're free to talk. So who would like to speak first?
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name's Nancy Kennedy, and I reside at 8 Pietro Place. And I'm here tonight speaking, and some others may want to speak as well, but primarily I'm here to speak on behalf of the residents of Pietro Place. And we have, how many houses represented here? Maybe 5 of us. 4 houses are represented here tonight. So we're really glad to see that the improvements for the, flood the drainage system of Gould Park and Pietro Place is on the capital plan. We looked it over, we listened to the meeting last week, and we're expect that the funds will be found to make this happen. We understand there's also $1 million coming up in 22, 23. So we trust that these improvements will be made. Our main reason for being here tonight is the short term. We're living in fear. Every time there's a storm, it's a dangerous situation for us. On September 1st, and it's not the first time since 1979, this cul-de-sac has been flooding. So on September 1st, people were evacuated urgently, no shoes, in their pajamas. So that was a life-threatening situation. That could happen again. So we're concerned for our well-being and our safety, not just of our lives, but our property, our homes. We've all lost collectively hundreds of thousands of dollars of property, not to mention the equity in our homes going down because of this flooding problem. So there needs to be a short-term fix somehow. If you look at the catch basin on Maple Street, that was, Helene has a picture of it, and maybe she can come up when I'm done and show or display. But I guess on the advice of an engineer, rocks were piled in, this big sinkhole appeared on September 1st where the catch basin wasn't sufficient for the drainage. And so rocks were piled in to fill it, and a curb, I would say, I didn't measure, but it looks like it's about 1.5 feet at the most. Trust me, that will do nothing if there's another event like September 1st. It's not going to stop anything. We're going to be flooded again. So at the advice of an attorney, we called a civil engineer who, just consulting with him over the phone for 20 minutes, he was able to look at his maps and identify, certainly there's not enough drainage for the problem. He said, come out, we can look at it. It's a fix, it's straightforward engineering. So I'm wondering why this has to take so long. Why do we have to wait to the end of the year to get a plan in place? Why can't we are there FEMA funds available to the village? What about the Westchester County grants? I mean, what about the ARPA funds that you're hoping for the $1 million fix? Why can't that be applied for? Why can't we get this going now in the long term? I mean, meanwhile, what are we going to do in the short term? The fire department can't pump us out. Who's going to pump us out? Everybody stands around our floods. We had 6 feet in our basement, Ron and I. I lost my Steinway, $40,000 Steinway grand piano. We're professional musicians. can't work right now. Who's going to pump us out when that happens next time? Hopefully there won't be a next time, but if there is, does DPW do it legally? I mean, who can come and pump us out? I know the fire department's not supposed to do that. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add? I don't even know if that was 3 minutes, but yeah.
I just want to join.
Tell me your name and your address.
Excuse me, yes, Claudia Kapp, I live on 12 Pietro Place. So I just wanted to, of course, add my voice to what has been said so far. And over the last 3 months, we have been flooded 3 times. So July 8th, August 22nd, and September 1st. So we are really, really concerned, and I please pay attention to this. I have 3 small children. They are terrified now every time it rains, because 3 times over 2 months, this is really like not something that can be ignored. And of course, there is the economic loss, because this was not the first time, the second times they were not covered by insurance. Now we are taking measure, but we still do not have hot water. Why? Because we are scared that this might happen again, and we're gonna lose again our appliances, our furnace, and everything else that comes with it. So please do think of us every time that there is rain, because in the meantime, as we try to identify how we go forward, we live in fears and we cannot repair our homes. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak?
Yes, my name is Ann Schneider and I live at 100 Belden Avenue and Pietro Place. My house, miracle, nothing happened to it. But what I saw on the block was beyond horrifying. I had 7 people come to sleep in my house one night. I mean, I live alone, so it's like, oh boy, okay, come on in, whatever. But this is not going to continue until you get an approval of something. This needs to be done now. The utter devastation, when she says 6 feet of water, that's way over my head. You can't even stand up. So I'm very worried. I've lived in this town a long time. I can't believe my house didn't flood, but somehow a miracle happened. There was just so much water from a combination of the storm as well as the big thing on Maple Street. That area just collapsed and water kept flowing. It was like Niagara Falls out the window. I couldn't even go out to take a look. It was just awful. So I'd like to hear what it is that you might be thinking of doing to help these poor families.
Okay.
So think and see what you could, don't put it off for 22 or 23. We need help. They need help now. And so whatever you could do, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
So, okay.
Ron Vincent, 8 Pietro Place. And this isn't if it's going to happen again, it's when it's going to happen, because it is going to happen again. I was walking my dog this morning and the skies were dark. And the first thing to mind was, am I going to get flooded today? This is a daily occurrence. I was in Kansas City working over the weekend. I was looking at the reports, the weather reports every day, wondering if my house is going to get flooded again. There's no way to live. There's no way to live. This is not just a minor issue. This is a major issue. And I hope that you can see that and help us through this as quickly as possible.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Can we bring the microphone to him?
Yeah.
Stay there, stay there, stay there.
Stall. 16 Pietro Place. We've been living there 42 years. The first 30 years wasn't bad. I think we had 1 flood maybe. The last 12 years, 6 floods. That's where I'm just saying, it's either. I've never looked at the weather channel more than I have now. Take a look at what's gonna be in 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I don't know where to live. When I first moved here from the Bronx. Friends. It's easy. The bus is a whole lot. And it's so eloquently said by my predecessors here, it's not a way to live. Something has to be done. Believe me, it's that bad.
Anybody else?
My name is Roshani Zafendra. I live at 12 Pietro Place. I'm a music producer, engineer. My 2 studios I had in the house got wiped out completely. Tons of CDs, thousands of CDs, records I've collected, art I've collected over the years. Now my children every day, and the rainfall. Daddy, I'm scared. Daddy, I'm scared. It's a lot, and they've been through a lot already. She was bitten by a dog, experienced fire, and now water again, constantly. So it's just too much for us. And the loss is a lot. Nobody could repair us. So we have to do something. We all experience the loss. I've seen them throw out half of their house, if not 3/4. Same way with Helen and her husband, all his record collection. We all keep losing and losing, and people think FEMA is going to fix or repair us. That's chicken change. It's like cutting off your arm and attaching a finger. It's not doing anything. The loss is more than what we could get back, and we have to do something. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so, okay.
Hi, my name is Laura Crowley. I live at 7 Pietro Place. And fortunately, our house does not have a history of flooding, but this time, because of the unprecedented, conditions and because of what happened on Maple that, we had it's a waterfall that was coming and our street literally turned into a river. We did have flooding and like all of my neighbors, we lost our hot water heater, we lost our furnace. We went like 2 weeks with no hot water. We went about 3.5 weeks with, no stove. Like all of us, we spent so much money on like just getting takeout and things like that because we couldn't cook. I can show you like my receipts from like grocery stores and restaurants and things like that. It's hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And again, like my neighbors, I lost thousands of dollars worth of clothing that I had stored in my basement, which was troubling to me. I mean, it's never going to be replaced. My insurance wouldn't cover it. I have my, rejection letter from my insurance that I'm attaching to my application to FEMA. I've spent a lot of time, as my neighbors have, we've all been stressed out. We've all been on the phone. I think you all know how much fun it is to be on the phone with your insurance company. It's even more fun to be on the phone with the government. No offense, but it is. I don't know how much you've done that. And like Roshani said, it's like everybody just keeps losing and losing and losing. And that means that, in all honesty, that the town is going to keep losing and losing and losing. And right now, thankfully, all the only things that have been lost have been items and things and property. But this storm was so bad. And I think everybody who, unless you like have been under a rock for years, knows that, climate change is real, and there is definitely a chance that something like this is going to happen again and again and again. And I really feel that it is just absolutely it's in everybody's, best interest that not only do you have to come up with a permanent plan, okay, I get that, but you guys need to work on getting a temporary fix that is gonna work, because I swear, seriously, I hope to God that we're never here because one of us died. And I mean, that's, I hope it's not going that way, but let's face it, people died during the storm, children died. And I don't think anybody wants Dobbs Ferry to be associated with that.
So I want to let people know that we do appreciate the situation. I visited myself. I've been to some of your houses. I've seen the damage that occurred to some of your houses. It was heartbreaking to see all your belongings out on the lawn drying out and seeing all the damage that was done to your house. I know Deputy Mayor Cassell was also there a few days after the storm. And I don't know if anybody else from the board, Trustee Sullivan was also there. And as you know, we've had the village administrator was there a few times, as well as DPW, the engineer. And we have taken some starting steps. And maybe Richard, you can talk about the survey that we've done and the engineer that's come by and talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I mean, as many of you know, I've been out there several times, and so I'm well aware of what the situation was on two separate occasions. The village recently engaged a new engineer last spring, and they've been making stops and trips all over the village. Of course, one of the most egregious is your area, so we've been in that area. Tomorrow, we have a scheduled meeting with the engineer, and we're going to look to see, what kind of temporary fixes that we can do. Honestly, in my opinion, I'm a lawyer, not an engineer. I think you need a permanent fix, and that's going to take time. But we want to try to come up with something that will do the best we can under the circumstances. I'm having that meeting actually tomorrow morning. We're going to be touring all around the village, and we're going to finish it up with brainstorm to try to figure out what we can do to try to, I don't know that we can actually stem a storm like that, but we can do our best to try to make it as protected as possible.
I know we have the survey that shows throughout the whole village. You showed me that survey last week of all the,
we're looking at infrastructure and whatnot and stormwater systems. We're aware of what they are, and there's more work that needs to be done. So we're all very aware of it, and I'm very aware of your situation. So as I said, I scheduled this meeting actually over the weekend, and it's going to be on for tomorrow, and I'm going to be looking for some short-term fixes.
and I think maybe we can put something out. Maybe we can do, I don't know, something on our website or an email, maybe just an update as to where we are on after the meeting. And
Yeah, again, I'm more for telling people the reality. I'm not fictionalizing. I don't want to lead you to a place of false security, but I'm telling you that we're making a very high priority, and tomorrow I'm going to look for some short-term fixes, but it's the engineering that has to happen, not the lawyering. So, we're doing the best that we can. It's not a situation that was created this year. So, we're trying to roll back history and try to make it right. So.
And will we kept abreast of this, what we find tomorrow?
well, it depends. I'm going to leave it to Richard to decide. He may have a follow-up meeting the following week where to do more information. So we
I'm
can.
certainly happy to share anything that I know and any ideas that we have. I just want to be realistic, and I know it doesn't help.
Well, we're all very concerned, as you can tell, and as we should be, since our lives are. But it'd be nice if we could get an email, maybe one of us, and we can share it with the others.
Sure.
I really personally don't want to wait a week to hear what happens tomorrow. Come on.
Okay, that's fair enough. So why don't you leave us your email with Liz, and Liz can circulate it, and certainly Richard or Lisa can send out an email as an update as to what happened tomorrow. Okay.
You have an email chain and you have one representative, then we can get the information to you much quicker.
I have Nancy Kennedy's email.
addressed. So she's been communicating with others.
Okay, I sent a couple letters, sent a couple emails.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we'll do that. We'll let you know what happens after the meeting next week, tomorrow, and then we'll go from there.
When is the next meeting here? Then we'll go over the next-
Okay, every 2 weeks. So the next meeting is October 12th.
It's not every 2 weeks. It's the
Well-
second and fourth Tuesday.
At 6:30.
That's why she sits at the right hand side. You can come every time, no? All right, so thank you, guys. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like, or guys can leave right now. It's up to you. Thank you. Again,
Thank you.
it's not that we don't care, right? Obviously, we do care. It's just a matter of engineering and money, but we'll see what we can do as quickly as possible. So thank you. And again,
One more thing, the fire people said that they could not contact the houses, and that wasn't their job. Now, is that something that could be changed if this flooding ever continues?
That's state law.
that's state law.
What about you?
I don't think it'll be any different between the five.
It's state law. It's not state law.
So what are we supposed to do?
I would, if you want to,
Oh, we're flooded, find something to talk.
we could try to change the state law, but that would start with your state senator and just do a Cousins or Tom Mambananti if you want to change the state law. But you know what, maybe we could refer you to the state law that we're referring to, and then you could contact those state representatives and see what can be done. Okay, guys? Again, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is a presentation. I don't know if anybody's here for that presentation, but I have a proclamation proclaiming Saturday, October 2nd, 2021 as David Scotty Shevlin Day. I know there's a homecoming football game on Saturday, which will present this proclamation, but just so that everyone knows that I officially recognize Scotty's service to our community, and through the authority of my office do hereby proclaim Saturday, October 2nd, 2021 is David Scotty Shevlin Day in the village of Dobbs Ferry, and direct that this proclamation be carried throughout the village for people of goodwill to see and know. And I will have this on Saturday. So thank you. Next is a public hearing to consider an application for site plan approval / waivers needed for development of property located on 398 Ashford Avenue with the goal of converting commercial space in a mixed-use building into residential units, resulting in a multi-family building with a total of 8 units. Is there a motion to open? Oh, let me just go back to one thing. There was initially going to be a presentation regarding diversity training, but that's been taken off the agenda. If they're not available at this present time, we will schedule that for another time. Is that correct, Richard?
Yes, we've been waiting to hear from them. Right.
Okay. So is there a motion to open the public hearing as I outlined before, just previously? Trustee Sullivan, second trustee Patino, all in favor? The public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here to speak to that?
Mayor, the planners here, Mayor Sue Ballard, may want to comment on it.
There you go.
Sure.
What do you-
Thank you very much.
This is the first time I'm seeing you in person.
You are just
Welcome.
not all of me.
So welcome to be here in person.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's better in person than it is on Zoom.
Yes, it is.
So why don't you shed some light and provide some information on it?
Sure. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some procedural comments. Just this board, just to let you know, we did send out a county board notification to Westchester County because of its location to the Sawmill Parkway. The county did send an acknowledgement, but they said that none of the project did not interfere with any of their property, so they were not going to weigh in on the parking spaces that were of concern from this board. As this application continues moving forward, this board, and I did confirm with the building inspector that this board would need to provide 3 waivers for this project. If not, the applicant would have to go to the zoning board of appeals. The first waiver is dealing with the impervious coverage. The second is 2 parking spaces, and the third is the minimum residential dwelling unit size. The units proposed on the ground floor do not meet the 600 square foot minimum.
So just from a procedural point of view, so if we either refuse to address those waivers, or if we deny those waivers, then they can go to the zoning board?
That's correct.
Okay.
Also, in terms of seeker, this was the lead, the village board did declare themselves lead agency, and this is an unlisted action. And so part 1 of the environmental assessment form is complete and was submitted as part of your packets back in September. And I did provide you a part 2, and part 2 basically looks at whether the actual impacts are no impact, small impact, moderate to large impacts. Ultimately, the final decision will be this board, whether you provide a negative declaration or positive declaration. I did provide that as part of your packet. And based upon the environmental assessment form, as well as the overall project, I'm recommending that no to small impact may occur for the various environmental topic areas, including like land use, impacts on traffic, impacts on public wastewater, impacts on important historical, archaeological, and architectural resources, water bodies, groundwater, as well as erosion, flooding, or drainage. I think mostly all the aspects associated with this project can be taken care of by engineering and already what was submitted as part of the overall site plan. The last item I just wanted to highlight is actually dealing with the parking itself. The biggest issue I think the board is going to need to weigh in on is dealing with the 2 parking spaces. Currently, the applicant is proposing to use on-street spaces to reduce the required parking, which is allowed in your zoning code. The planning board, however, recommends that the Board of Trustees consider directing the applicant to provide a payment in lieu of parking per section 348, as the on-street parking spaces they are concerned are too close to the on-ramp of the Sawmill Parkway. So that is really the last remaining site plan issue this board needs to deliberate on regarding this application.
Couple questions for you. In the impervious surface calculation, how much are they over? Is it a large percentage, a fairly small one?
It's a fairly, actually, this one I believe is a slightly larger one. I don't have the plans in front of me. I can, if you give me 5 minutes, I can.
And then the 600 square foot minimum unit, what's the 3 new units are proposing? What size are those?
I believe they're somewhere around like 400 square feet. And again, I can pull up the plans.
And so maybe it's already done to the planning board, that 400 square feet, there are no other, the unit can be done in 400 square feet, but there are no other regulatory compliance issues with.
No, and the building inspector was not concerned with the overall square footage.
Okay.
Say that again, the building inspector was not.
It was not concerned. I mean, the units have been proposed the same square footage throughout the whole entire site plan process.
Now, the apartments that already exist, what size are they in that unit, in that building, do you know?
I don't,
Are these like around the same size as those?
yeah, let me pull up the actual plans. I thought the applicant.
Where is the applicant?
Yeah,
Is the
I was gonna say,
Is the applicant here?
Probably on Zoom.
no.
Oh, interesting. He's always on.
We can't see very much.
It's really hard.
I'm just gonna say, can I move forward without the applicant?
It's hard to conduct a
Yes.
public hearing when the applicant isn't here to
Answer questions.
prosecute the matter. So you want to just hold this in abeyance and see if we can reach him and move on to the second one and just put this on for second call. Nicole will recognize that.
Okay. All right, so why don't we do that? Well,
Yeah, he's usually here, so I would.
Yeah,
I'm not
this-
used to
this-
coming.
sometimes we get some late.
It's really important to hear from the applicant.
Right, I get it. So I'm going to, I guess, keep this open and take a motion then to open the second public hearing, which is to consider a written request for waiver from the Doddisbury zoning code. Mandatory set aside of affordable housing unit on the same property as proposed development of 19 Livingston Avenue. Is there a motion to open this public hearing? Trustee Sullivan, second, trustee Taylor. All in favor? Okay, this public hearing is now open, and who was here for the applicant?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Linda Whitehead, partner with the firm of McCullough Goldberger and Stout. We represent, excuse me, the owners of the approximately 1.2 acre property known as 19 Livingston Avenue, and for some of us, as we know, formerly the location of Rudy's Beau Rivage. Our client has proposed 8 townhouses on this property, each of which will be located on its own lot, as is required by the zoning. The project would be fully zoning compliant. We've made a request for a waiver of the requirement for an on-site affordable unit, as is provided for in section 300-40C4 of your zoning code. Does anybody mind if I pull this down? Sorry, it's hard to talk.
Tell me about it.
As provided for in the code, to obtain the waiver, we've proposed to purchase or build a 3-bedroom unit at an alternate location within the village and lease or sell such unit as an affordable unit. And we would certainly work with the village and work with your affordable housing task force to identify a location for that at the appropriate time and in an appropriate location. If necessary, if they purchase an existing property and it needs to be fixed up or upgrades, the client would do that and then deed restrict it for 50 years, either as a rental or for purchase. We also had offered to make a payment in lieu, as is also provided for in your code. We know that you had said that you weren't, the village wasn't interested in that option. I just want to say that option could allow for the village to identify and purchase a site to construct a new affordable housing unit. The Affordable Housing Committee in Hastings has successfully developed a number of affordable housing units themselves using various sources of funds. So it is a viable option. I know it's something that your village is not interested in right now, or so you have indicated. So the applicant's required to justify the waiver in light of the goals of the affordable housing program and provide evidence that the inclusion of the affordable housing unit required would render the development financially infeasible. We've submitted 2 letters to you with various information, and I'm just going to kind of summarize that. We've provided information to show that the proposal to provide an offsite affordable unit will satisfy the goals of the affordable housing program by providing an additional unit of affordable housing, which will likely be available to a greater number of residents than the potential on-site unit, in particular if it's a rental. And my clients are willing to do it as a rental. We've also provided evidence of the high development costs for the project, which would result in a significant loss in the area of $600,000 to the project, which would impact on the small profit margin and make the project not feasible. I'm just going to, again, summarize some of the information we've provided on those 2 things. Once you have all that information, under your code, the board is required to balance the request for the waiver against the goals of the affordable housing program. So when you look at the goals of the affordable housing program, this is an opportunity to have an existing structure rehabilitated or potentially a new structure constructed, and then restricted to provide continued availability of fair housing for residents of various income levels while promoting the general welfare by increasing the potential for qualifying individuals or families who may also be workers and volunteers providing valuable services to the village to be able to live in Dobbs Ferry. And that language is directly out of the purpose section of your affordable housing code. We provided a discussion of the process for qualifying purchasers for sale affordable units, which would result in a limited number of families who could qualify. I also provided a summary of that process, which has been prepared by the Housing Action Council. As you know, the Housing Action Council works with Westchester County and is the agency that qualifies purchasers for affordable housing within the village and monitors that on an ongoing basis. We anticipate that an offsite unit would not have the associate, if it's not in an HOA or a condo, it wouldn't have those charges and may well have lower taxes if it's not a new unit. And therefore, in the calculation of the affordability, it would be affordable to more because all of the monthly expenses are considered in calculating whether you qualify. In the document we prepared from the Housing Action Council, they do talk about the difficulty in that with for sale units, very often it takes 20 applications to find one that actually qualifies. So it is a difficult process, and obviously the higher the price, the higher the monthly expenses, the harder it is to get someone to qualify. We think an even better result for the village and for the goals of your affordable housing law would be if the unit were to be a rental, because it's much easier to qualify for a rental. It's anybody who's 60% AMI or under could qualify for the rental unit. There's not the same level of having to qualify. You don't need a down payment and all of those other types of things. So therefore, by providing an offsite affordable unit, we believe it does serve the goal of creating affordable housing available to residents and others at a variety of income levels, and therefore satisfies the goals. As I said, the code also requires the applicant to provide evidence that the inclusion of an affordable housing unit would render the development financially infeasible. The estimated construction costs that we've presented range from about $330 to $385 per square foot just for building costs, labor and materials only. When the soft costs are added in, this increases to about $350 to $420, probably on the high side, because we know the soft costs, the engineering on this site, the approval process, the permitting fees will be on the high side. So that does not include some of your selling costs. That doesn't include marketing, brokers' commissions, transfer taxes, and other closing costs. So, or the taxes paid during the carry period until you sell. So the actual per square foot cost to the developer by the time they go to sell the unit is actually higher than that. Those estimates are based on actual construction costs of other similar projects throughout Westchester and Fairfield, as well as some specific site considerations that increase the costs on this particular site. I've reviewed these with a number of architects in the area and done a little research, even just on Google, and do per square foot construction costs in Westchester County, and you'll see ranges of numbers similar to these. These may even turn out to be low because, as I'm sure you've heard, since the onset of the pandemic, both lumber and steel prices have skyrocketed. They may be starting to come back down. We hope they're starting to come back down, but that could increase the costs more. Again, I spoke about the increase with the soft costs and the other things involved. This site, as many of you know, it slopes down to the rear. There's going to be some significant site development costs. The county trunk sewer goes through the site. So for working on the steep slopes, having to put in the retaining walls, the stormwater system that's going to be required, which is complicated because of the steep slopes, and the connection to the county trunk sewer, these site costs are going to be between $800,000 and $900,000 is the current estimate. So it's over $100,000 per unit just for basic site preparation and site costs. This has actually been reduced from the prior version of the prior project on this property by reducing the size of the project to only 8 units. They've avoided the steepest slopes in the rear of the site, so limited the steep slope disturbance and the extent of retaining walls. And that's why we're looking at only 8 units, and those 8 units are fully zoning compliant. If you look at the affordable unit, and again, at 80% of the square footage, it's about 2,700 square feet, 3-bedroom. If you assume some slightly different finishes in the affordable unit, the cost is still going to be over $300 a square foot. So for the 2,700 square feet, that's going to be a total construction cost for that unit. Again, forgetting marketing, for any broker's fees, all of those other things, of over $800,000. The restriction on the sale price is likely to be somewhere between 200 and 300. It's hard to peg it exactly until we know an estimate of what the taxes are and the common charges and some of those things, and what the interest rates are at that time. but probably somewhere between 2 and 3. It's not going to be higher than 3. I think the highest we've seen is probably around 250, 260 for for sale units. So conservatively, we're looking at a loss just from the construction costs to the sale costs of around $600,000. This project has relatively low profit margin. Even the market rate units, which will cost around 1.2 million to construct. And then again, you have the taxes, the carry, the closing costs, transfer tax commissions, marketing, all of that. So all those costs add up. And then if you have to also absorb a $600,000 loss, it really starts to eat into what is a small profit margin. And my clients have looked at this inside and out, and they just really feel that it doesn't work. It really makes it not economically feasible for them to move ahead. So I'm well aware of some of the other affordable units and some other projects in the village recently. I've been involved in both Cedar Commons and Print House Lofts. As you know, in Cedar Commons, we agreed to do an extra affordable unit. And the real difference is they're in a different zone. So this property, this zoning allows 1, 2, and 3 family homes and townhouses. So you can't do apartments, you can't do stacked flats, or you can, but only 3 in a 3-family home. That really impacts on how it gets built, what it can look like, the cost, they're more expensive to build, and the flexibility in design. So in a townhouse layout, especially where you've got the slope in the back and they're kind of built on the slope, so they're 3 stories or so, maybe a little more even in the back, the way the slope is with the garages under. It's hard to vary the size too much and put too much of a smaller unit. It's actually going to stand out just by being smaller. And it's going to look odd, and the configuration is going to be odd. There's so much more flexibility in how you lay out different units, even a unit that's still 80% of the original size, where you can have apartments or stacked flats. That's why we were able to work an additional affordable unit, bless you, into Cedar Commons. With Print House Lofts was under your old code, and the 2 affordable units there are actually very small. They're both around 600 square feet. That wouldn't be allowed under your code today. But again, because they're flats, it's easier to have the flexibility to do that. This zoning is very different. It's a less dense zone. Again, allowing 1, 2, 3 family and fee simple townhouses, that creates a more expensive product because you don't have the same density that you have in those multifamily zones. So it's really just not that easy to just put an affordable unit at a smaller size into this type of a development. We also heard some concerns expressed about this being another project with $1 million plus luxury homes. That's not really the issue we're here to talk about tonight. We're not here to talk about the project. We're here to talk about how the affordable unit is provided. But it goes back to the same issue of the zoning. That's what you're going to get in this zone. It's a less dense zone. It restricts the type of housing. Fee simple townhouses, 1, 2, 3 family homes. When you've got that, you've got the steep slopes, the various site constraints. This is the type of project that you're going to get on that site. My clients had a more dense project. Nobody liked it. They've gone back to the drawing board. They've come back with what they thought was a reasonable project. So we ask your consideration. This is a law that was recently amended within the last 2 years. It specifically allows for this waiver with an offsite or a fee in lieu. And therefore, we ask that the board consider this. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the board, anybody in the board have any questions?
Sure, I mean, we can start. I mean, I think that you've said a lot of things, and you said them in the letter you submitted today or I don't remember, sorry, what the date of it was, but this week and the August 2nd letter, but I'm not seeing any real like support for the numbers or why it's really not feasible to have an affordable or unit on site, which is what our code requires. I don't know that just purchasing or renting a 3-bedroom somewhere else in the village is actually meeting the goals of our affordable housing statute and why it's so important to the village. And we put this into our code, and I haven't really heard anything tonight that supports that or puts in any evidence about that.
So could I just point out that the code actually anticipates this? It allows for it. So I'm not sure how you say this isn't in keeping with the code. The code, while it says, you know, at the first instance, try to put it on site, but that's not what the goal is. If you look at the goals that are set forth in the purpose section, it talks about providing affordable housing available to people of varying income levels.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't just hear what you're saying, but I think that, you know, it's a hypothetical about what, you know, a year or 2 year, whenever you get to purchasing or finding a 3-bedroom, that's probably likely something that the person who we created this code section for is already living in. So we'd be displacing that person for this. And I do think that we wanted to have diversity in the housing across the village and not just in specific areas. And, you know, I appreciate what the developer here has done from the first time this project was here to now, especially the view sheds, which I think is important, but I think there's a burden that has to be met. And I just haven't heard it. Yes, the code allows us to do a waiver, but it requires the applicant to come in and prove to us that it's, you know, economically not feasible to put a affordable housing unit there. And I'm not seeing how or why that's economically infeasible, other than the developer conclusorily states that it's infeasible and would make it impossible. And I could argue against all the points you made as to why that they're probably not true. And I can make conclusions the other way. I mean, that's what lawyers do. So I just think that you haven't, from what I'm hearing now, I haven't seen any burden met that shows that you're meeting the goals and objectives of our code. It's like, we want to have 8 3,000 square foot apartments that we can sell at full value. You know, you mentioned that a rental unit would be better for the village. Why not just do a rental unit on site? And that would help alleviate some of the concerns you have about being able to sell the unit and what you sell it for and all that stuff.
Well, it's someone still has to own it and rent it out. So you're asking them to either, you know, hold on to, you know, that type of a unit and have no return on it except for rents at 60% AMI, which is even worse from a financial feasibility standpoint, because they would have very minimal return on the cost of constructing that unit until over a very long period of time, or get somebody to buy it as a rental. And they would get probably an even lower price if the person was only going to be able to rent it at 60% AMI. So I don't think that an on-site rental, it's actually less feasible. I think we've provided numbers. Those are pretty standardized numbers. The site work number is a number that my clients have developed with their engineer by looking at what's involved. We talked about the things that are involved, the retaining walls, the steep slopes, the connection to the county trunk sewer. I mean, these are real things. The cost of construction, those are pretty standard numbers. If you look at any project that's been built in recent years, especially, you know, this type of product, those are the kind of numbers you're going to say.
Does the price per square foot that you put in your letter, does that include the 800,000 to 900,000 you had for the
Yes.
steep slope?
So, yeah, so a big chunk of it or a portion of it is that.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. You keep talking about the purposes, but there's also intent, and the affordable housing law was, the intent of the law is that we have diverse housing throughout the village. Throughout the code too, it keeps saying, you know, on site. We provided the waiver for very unusual circumstances. So I do have a question. Your cost of construction is based on square footage.
That's the typical way
Right.
that construction costs are
And
calculated.
you've got 8 units that are 3,400 square feet.
Correct.
Is that the smallest units that you can put in there to break even?
That's what my clients have, the market is looking for. That's, sort of their analysis of the market demand and what they would need to recoup the costs and investment. They're 3-bedroom. They're not,
Yeah.
5-bedroom. They're
3,400 square feet.
yes.
34 or 37?
34.
The affordable housing unit has to be 2,700.
27, okay.
That's the 80%. It's 27, 20 or something like that.
I have a question.
Yes, Christine.
Oh, hi. I'm on the TV. I mean, I'm interested in the idea of, or how much has been thought into if there was a pileup and the village decided to build affordable housing, like you mentioned they did in Hastings, is that figure of what would be required to build such a project incorporated into the number that would then still make it financially viable if it's included in the numbers here? Like I'm a little confused. Like if it's 300 a square foot to build those and we're trying to build something equivalent offsite and it still costs close to that because that would make it equivalent, then why would it then be financially viable to add a project on top of this project? I just don't see how it could be viable if it's offsite, even if it's.
So from my client's standpoint, if they have to build the affordable on-site, they then have 7 market rate units to sell, which cuts into their profits. If they're doing something offsite, they have 8 market rate units to sell. So they have greater profit and income out of which they could make a payment to do something offsite. There's been some, and full disclosure, I'm the village attorney in Hastings. But they've done some interesting things, like they built a house with an accessory apartment, the Affordable Housing Committee. So you get both a home ownership unit and a rental unit.
But we're not in a position really to do that here right now.
I'm just throwing out an example. So it's Trustee Nell asked, so I was trying to address the issue.
What's your client's total estimated profits for the 8 units if they're sold at market value?
I think it's impossible to say right now because we don't know what the market's going to be at the time they're completed, but it's as I said, the cost to construct based on the estimated construction cost for the market units is going to be about 1.2. You add broker's commission and taxes and marketing and transfer tax and other closing costs. You're going to be up to, close to 1.4, 1.5 in total expenses in. And, they're going to hope to sell them obviously for more than that. It's going to be what the market will bear. So I don't know if there's a more precise number that I can give at this time.
Are there any equivalents in the area of what something like that would go for? On the waterfront?
Well, this isn't on the waterfront. It has views.
I'm sorry. I mean, that would give us an idea.
I know,
of why
I'm
this
thinking up and
wasn't
down the river.
feasible.
Because in your presentation, you did mention something about what the demand of the market was. So I would assume that if we have an idea of what the demand is, we have an idea what they're looking for.
By the time we got through the approval cost and built the project, it's going to be probably at least a few years from now. So as we all know, the market can change rapidly. Right now it's up. Could go down. So that's why it's just hard. I mean, I can ask them if they, have looked at what sale prices would be.
And is their intention to actually sell all 8 units?
Yeah.
One of the big concerns about constructing or purchasing and renovating off-site affordable units has been the historical precedent for developers who have built sort of a high quality product on their main site and let the affordable unit, which doesn't impact those residents, fall shy of the quality standards that the main site maintains. And so as part of your presentation, I don't think we've heard anything about any kind of assurance or any kind of agreement that you would make with the village to ensure similar quality construction, durability, all the things that are important to the main site and those units that you're building. How do you assure us that those happen off-site if in fact we are willing to consider?
So I did mention that if they bought something that was in need of repair, they would fix it up and try to bring it up to a level that the village is comfortable with. So it was improve the quality of the housing stock, if you will. And obviously that becomes even more important if it's going to be a for sale unit, because you worry about things that might break, the roof, things like that. With a rental, that's not as important because the landlord is still responsible for those things. But just in terms of the quality, they are willing to work with the village, not only on the quality, but the location, because we know that location is important for you. So, we would be willing to work with the village on both of those things based on what's available on the market. Sort of, we can't go looking for anything right now because if we find something, it's going to be gone in 2 weeks.
You also said something about the difficulty of finding a renter for this affordable housing client that would be able to
Qualify to
afford this.
purchase.
Qualify, thank you.
Qualify
Searching for
for
Has-
purchase.
Did you
Yeah.
speak to Rose Noonan?
I've
about that?
spoken to
Like,
Rose about it
and
several
Did she say
times.
that it wasn't, that she couldn't find anybody?
She didn't say she couldn't find anybody. She said it would probably take a while and would be difficult and there would be a very limited pool. And I think even in the document that I provided that came from her, she talked about, on for sale units, it's for every 20 applicants, 1 qualifies, and it can take a very long time to actually, and I've had that experience. I've represented a client who did a 16-unit affordable condominium project in Briarcliff close to 10 years ago now. And it took years for them to sell out the project, and they had to carry it during that time. It was a big burden because really it's her numbers of 20 to 1 is really accurate. And it's a long process. And I talked to Rose about this the other day because, it's a lottery. So they have to look at each one in the order that they got picked in the lottery. So they can't move on to the next one until they've gone through, number 1 and go through the whole qualification process with number 1. And if they don't qualify, then they can go to number 2, and it goes on and on. So it can be a very long process. And as I said, in the document that she had prepared, she said it can take about 20 to find 1 qualified.
Anything else?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Christy.
Just have one more question in considering the pilot concept. Maybe it's for Lori Lee. How do you calculate what that fee would be? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
that was a good question.
No, I was thinking the
That was a
same
good
thing.
How do you
question.
calculate, because how, are we saying it's $1 million pileup, or what is this fee? And because I feel like it's key to knowing whether or not you're still going to come to the same conclusion at the end of it not being financially viable. So I want to know how that fee is calculated.
So unfortunately, your code doesn't really spell out how that gets calculated. So again.
So it's up to us.
Yeah, well, it's up to you provided we, it has to be within reason that we would agree to it. I don't know that $1 million is the right number. I would think something
But if it
less
was to
than that.
build something, if it was to build something that is affordable housing in line with what is being built, and it's gonna cost 1.2 to build one of those, wouldn't it be,
The affordable unit's not going to cost 1.2. The affordable unit is likely to cost, what did I say? I think I said around 8 because it's a little smaller.
If
So-
the board is interested in pursuing that avenue, I can provide you some examples from neighboring communities and how they do their costs of a payment in lieu of.
That'd be very helpful.
yeah, and because it's also, I mean, if we were to take that on, it's not just a matter of the price of building, it would be the price of managing the project too, because we don't have like a project manager on staff to manage something like that. So we'd have to have that as well. So I just want to make sure that while it's being thrown out as a possibility on your side, that it's actually a possibility, period, because if it's not, then all we're talking about is rehabbing and and that's it, right? Like that's the only other option is rehabbing something.
Or if we could find a lot building.
Right.
Would you build it then? If we found a lot?
Yeah, if there was a lot reasonably available, at a reasonable price. I don't know that there's a lot of land available. So I know that's not necessarily realistic.
So just so I'm clear, Christy, you're indicating that a fee in lieu of this affordable unit is back on the table? Because I think you were requesting a 1-for-1, you were requesting them to consider putting that affordable unit elsewhere in the village. So
I just want to make sure that, that the board, that we understand that if there is a possibility of building affordable housing that could still fulfill what we're requiring, I just want to know that that would be something that they could actually do. And that, I don't want to throw it out and say it's just not an option when it could be an option. If we had somebody to plan it, we could pay for somebody to build it and we could build a new unit somewhere else that's not amongst the downtown. I just want to say that I'm not throwing that off the table for any reason, because that's not unreasonable to me personally. I don't know how we would have the staff to do that. I don't know how Hastings could pull it off, but they're saying that they'd be willing to do it. I want to see that that's true.
They have a very active committee.
Right.
So do we.
Well, their committee has been around for a long time and they're
No, I know.
totally
They are
different setup.
professionals.
And and putting it out there that, I don't want to see just an eyesore there forever. And I think something needs to be built there at some point, and I want to entertain that as a possibility. And if this is really something that could be done, I would want to know that that we could build something affordable and actually add to the stock of affordable units. But if it's not actually feasible and we're just talking about it like it is, then I want to know that too.
Ellery, can you let us know exactly what's involved in
Yes,
something like
I
that?
can.
Because it's more than just building the building. There's a lot more to it.
That's correct.
Yes.
I can.
Thank you.
Larry, did you have anything you wanted to speak to?
Yeah, well, one comment, which is the builder here could probably build something if the two were of equivalent quality at a much lower price than the village could do it, because they have the existing infrastructure and don't have some of the restrictions that municipalities might have to build. Just wanted to ask a question: if the developer were allowed a different density, like more density for affordable, and did 2 units instead of 1, that certainly would solve the affordability side of the equation. And I just wonder if that's something that is a possibility that could be considered.
on site, you mean, or in this?
Yes, on site.
So we discussed this a little bit, I think, at one of the prior meetings. Again, we're working in sort of a constrained area of the site to try to avoid going all the way down into the steep slopes in the back. And that's how the number of 8 was arrived at, because it worked with minimizing the site disturbance. So we really weren't looking for more density. I think the prior plan had more density.
Maybe I wasn't clear. If you built 2 smaller affordable units, right? And possibly in the same footprint with the 2,700 square feet, that certainly would solve the affordability side of the equation in terms of being able to find potential buyers or renters of those properties.
So you're talking about maybe like 2 1,300, 1,400 square foot units?
I'm just throwing it out there.
I know, no, I
Yeah.
understand. So again, the problem, and this goes back to the configuration. You're talking, because the way that there are townhouses and with the slope, you're gonna end up with very narrow units. That just don't work as well. They don't configure as well, and they are gonna stand out and look kind of odd and very different.
But I have a.
Unless they
point
were
now.
stacked. I mean, I'm not an architect.
We can't do stacked in this zone. That's the
I'm
problem.
not sure that's, Lori Lee would know whether or not that's something that could be waived or managed if it were desirable for other purposes.
Because it requires fee simple townhouses, we can't do stacked. Stacked would have to be condo.
Lori Lee?
Would they have to be condo?
You can't do fee simple in a stack because they don't each have a lot.
Okay.
So you couldn't take like, you've got to get together, you've got 2 units together, so you've got 6,800 square feet in one lot, correct? There's no way you could take some of that existing site and put in 2 affordable units that are small, like 1,200 square foot each?
They would get very narrow.
But that's exactly what my point was going to be. You mentioned on your presentation that each townhouse will have their own lot. So if you divide the amount of the 2,700 into 2 separate units, that will be 1,350 each. Is that something that is still not suitable to be fit in the same location? It still is going to be too small?
So each one would have to be on its own lot. So each one would have to be a townhouse. And again, because these have to be tall because of the way the slope is and the way they're built on the slope. So they get very narrow.
For clarification, you can have 2 or 3 family dwelling units in that particular zoning district. But I think because they're proposing townhomes, the structure, the fee simple would be different, which would then become problematic for the stacking of that particular unit.
Right. If we could only do 2, we could only do a 3-family home then. Or, we would
Right.
have to, the whole thing would have to be set up completely. It doesn't work the same way.
Even though they're all on separate lots now, you couldn't have a
So
2-family
they
on one
might,
of the lots?
could they condo that one lot? I mean, we'd have to look into that.
I'm sorry.
It's actually an interpretation of your building inspector that you can't offer a condominium style because each unit must be quote on its own lot, and that
I wasn't
was-
talking about a condominium though. I said
No,
2-family.
I think that there is a simple solution to that. And that and it's a simple plan solution, if you were to just take one of the current lots
Yeah.
and divide that in half and have access from the back and the front separately,
Yeah.
you'd have both a smaller footprint for a house. So you could, yes, you would have a taller house, but there's a lot of precedent for that. And you would have separate lots. So you wouldn't have to stack them on top of each other. You would stack them side by side in a similar footprint that a full townhouse unit has. I think that just as we are willing to entertain a number of options, I think you as well should be looking at a number of options. This 2 units, on their own separate lots, but much smaller. So ultimately you'd be building similar amount of square footage, but you would not have the burden of not being able to find applicants, qualified applicants.
Well, it's still going to be a problem because it's a problem on any for sale affordable. It becomes if the units are a little smaller, some of the pricing like your taxes may be a little less, so some of the equation gets a little low. It's still an issue. If you look at what was provided by the Housing Action Council, the memo that I provided, it's still harder to qualify. It might get a little easier
I'm not
because the
arguing that
taxes
point.
might be a little less. and-
However, if you have an $800,000 construction cost, just,
Mhm.
and you are looking at a maximum sale price of $200,000, you're looking at a loss of 600 for your affordable housing requirement. If you had 2 units and those were able to sell also at $200,000 and you still had the same $800,000 construction costs, maybe it's slightly higher because you're building
Higher,
2
yeah.
kitchens, but it's not twice as high. You're then looking at a less severe loss. I think those are all pertinent questions to ask
Something
yourselves.
we
and-
can review. We've had a lot of, since this issue first came up several months ago, we've had a lot of discussions about different alternatives and if there were ways to make it work. So, I can go back to the client again, but we have looked at a lot of these options.
And also, I mean, I know you keep saying the rental is a lot easier for people to afford. I totally agree with that. I totally get that. It would be great to have a, affordable housing complex, rental. But again, part of the goal is to also allow people home ownership, affordable home ownership. That's also part of it.
So, I mean, the one thing is your village is a little ahead on that, and that you have the 2 units at Print House Lofts. You're going to have 3 home ownership units in Cedar Commons. So you've actually got more than a lot of other places in terms of home ownership. A lot of places only affordable rentals are being.
We have a
Built.
significant higher demand, unfortunately.
Well, the whole county has a high demand.
Yeah, exactly. So it's significant.
I don't think it's unique necessarily to Dobbs Ferry. It's the whole county. Has high
Yeah, but
demand.
again, that we have, I am part of the affordable housing as well. And for a lot of the discussions that we have had, we do have a significant need. So that's why, we put in so much effort into making sure that we continue to review the laws and continue to review all of the projects that are coming in order for us to be able to feed some of that need that we have.
Is there anybody from the public that'd like to speak?
We have someone in the room, so just.
Yeah, let Tracy go. Go ahead, Tracy.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Barron. I'm here representing the Affordable Housing Task Force. A couple of our other members are over here, and I think some of them may be on Zoom. I live at 10 Cricket Lane in Dobbs Ferry. We submitted a memo a few days ago to the mayor and the Board of Trustees, so I won't go through all of that, but I just wanted to touch on a couple of highlights and maybe speak to some of the discussion that we've heard. We don't believe at this point that the developer has met its burden in requesting a waiver of the requirement to include one affordable unit at this development. Try to remember that the code that we have, these kinds of codes are called inclusionary zoning, and that has that name for a reason. The goal is to include affordable housing in new developments, not for them to be separated out, if at all possible. One thing I just want to point out, because I know there was a lot of discussion about a payment in lieu of as a possible option. We really don't think that's a great option. Hastings has a local development corporation that is set up to build and run housing. We don't have that in Dobbs Ferry. So we'd be multiple years away from, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding, from being able to pull off something like that. So we think if any option is to be considered, it would be an option of building or purchasing something offsite. The other thing to keep in mind is, as our code points out, it is the developer's burden to provide evidence that the entire project would be economically infeasible with the affordable unit on site. And we have seen a lot of figures and numbers and estimates. We don't believe that that's constitutes evidence. We haven't seen documentation. We haven't seen a budget. We haven't seen financials, the kind of thing that you would provide to a lender that you were looking for financing. We've just seen estimates, and we not that I'm accusing anyone of making up numbers, but we would need some documentation of, let's show us some comparables. So we have seen some of these figures that we've heard from the developer. Those have all been on the cost side, and I don't want to minimize. Clearly, this is an expensive site to build on and it's complicated, but we haven't seen any documentation of the other side of the ledger. What these units would be expected to sell for, what would be the profit margins. I mean, those are the numbers that have to be balanced to figure out if a loss on this one unit is going to cut so much into the profits. We don't know what those profits are. And so we cannot be expected to just take their word for it. If they can come up with estimates on the cost side with documentation, we'd like to see those same numbers on the profit side. We don't, from our investigation, we don't think it's impossible to find eligible families for purchase units. Certainly it is harder than finding qualified renters. But when we're talking about just finding one or possibly two qualified purchasers, we haven't been given any indication by the Housing Action Council that that would be unreasonable or take a terribly long amount of time. I think there are projects where they need to come up with 10 or 15 or 20 for purchase eligible households. That can be hard to find all at once. But typically we're told that they get 200 applicants, maybe 6 or 7 of them will qualify. We also want to emphasize that we're not opposed to flexibility in terms of willing to think about creative solutions. And I think the commentary among the Board of Trustees has been very creative. So I think that what we need to see is that all of the possible creative solutions have been exhausted. And when everything has been exhausted, that's when we think they've met their burden, that this is just economically infeasible. And we just don't think we're at that point yet. There may be other types of waivers, as some of you have indicated, in terms of housing configurations. The only waiver that the developer is seeking is a waiver of the affordable housing requirement. What about some other possible waivers? Maybe those can be considered as well. And then just in terms of considering building or purchasing an affordable unit at another location, we don't think that should be off the table completely if this is really not possible. The downside, some of you have mentioned, it's normally you're looking at an older unit as opposed to brand new construction. So you have to think about what costs the purchaser might be looking at covering. We all know that older homes have higher costs. And the other thing to think about is the location. This is a fantastic location. We'd want to make sure that any other location that was considered was equally as desirable, right near downtown, walkable to everything. I think that's any of my compatriots have anything else to add. I think that's it. I'll take, if anyone has a question, happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. This is Chris Forte. I'm at 8 Livingston Avenue, so I'm directly across the street from the project. I think, the board to this point has, mentioned some very, good comments and good, insight into why this waiver is perhaps not the best idea. I'd like to echo that. I'm not going to sort of beat the horse to death, but a couple of things to sort of keep in mind. I'm guessing, the affordable housing requirement, was not put into place to simply allow for developers to, build a very large and expensive project and then to, kick the proverbial can down the little road in terms of providing affordable for sale units. So I don't think it would be within the, it wouldn't be in the spirit of the law, which is my guess. Other comments made by Ms. Whitehead, she mentions that it's difficult that, to be able to provide a number of people to not only be able to meet the minimum income requirements for owning a unit, but also below the threshold. I'm well in tune with that. I've actually worked in affordable housing for over a decade. So I understand that there's an income band. Yes, it's a little more work. No, I don't think it should be something that should allow for the applicant to wave their arms and say, we just can't figure it out. The other thing to keep in mind here, these are massive units. Even the affordable unit would be almost twice the size of my house. So I think it's a product of the applicant's own doing to say that we can't make one of these affordable where there's going to be a loss of profit because we just won't be able to find someone to be able to afford this. I mean, these are massive units. And I think thinking down the road, further down the line in this process, if the applicant were to maybe sharpen their pencils and get a little more creative, they would be able to solve another problem that's going to come, which is view preservation and also mass, especially along the frontage. And so one of the waivers they should be seeking, and I recognize it's not me who owns the land, but if they were to think about it, they would say, well, instead of seeking a waiver for an affordable housing unit overall, why not seek a waiver for the sort of ratio or the like kind size of unit compared to the market rate units? What they could do is make 2 units that are affordable, that are also less massive, and also preserve view down the road, which is definitely going to be a problem. I can tell you that. I don't want to live in a village that is not inclusionary and that is not diverse. And I think this would, creating a waiver for this would further exacerbate that issue. So I'm very in tune with this, and that's all I got. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hi there, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Matt, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, now I can. All right, that was an awkward transition from spectator to panelist. I'd just like to
tell us your address.
Sorry, Matt Rosenberg, 84 Magnolia Drive in Dobbs Ferry, lifelong resident. And I just want to put a very sharp point on something that Tracy said and ask Ms. Whitehead. If you say that you can't afford a $600,000 loss, but you can't explain what the profit margin is, how do you expect anybody to believe that that $600,000 is actually not feasible for you guys to absorb? You have a logical fallacy. You have to resolve that. You can't say you can't afford something when you don't know what the upside is. Can you please address that?
It's just comments tonight, so.
Then make a comment. I would hope that you will address that.
Perfect.
Anybody else?
Nobody else online.
Okay, so I think we spent an awful lot of time on this, and we have a lot of other questions and issues. So I'm going to adjourn this. I don't know if 2 weeks is enough time, really. So what's the meeting after the 12th, 26th? So I think I'm going to adjourn this to October 26th.
I asked if there's a reason why it can't be on the 12th. I can certainly review with my clients and try to address some of these things by the 12th.
What do you think as far as, I don't want to put the whole burden on you, but I know there's some information you have to do.
Well, I have listed that I'm going to provide examples of buyouts from other communities as well as, the overall structure, just so that you have the information on the buyout process. But that should not be too difficult for me to pull together over
Do
the
you
next
feel
2 weeks.
comfortable with the 2 weeks?
Yes, I can pull that together.
Can you could you just state the submission deadline, Liz? Can you give us some input into that? What is the submission deadline for that?
I have to look on the calendar item. It's, I believe it's October 4th.
That
Which
will
is
be
like
already,
next week.
that will be already next week.
October 4th, it's a Monday? Is that the Monday?
It's the Monday before.
October 4th. You could just want to make sure everybody in the room understands that. So you're not.
So it's, I mean, can we say the 12th, and if we're not prepared to get so we'd have to get anything into you by the 4th? And if we don't make that, can we then put it over to the 26th?
Bella, you feel comfortable with, I mean, that's a lot of,
I think that the October 4th is for the applicant
right,
submission.
that's true.
It's not for Valerie.
But I think,
get
but I
a
may
little
ask you to review some stuff, or we'd like to review.
Right,
things.
right. So then that would be, yeah, so then that would be tight. If there's additional submissions that are provided from the applicant and you're looking for additional.
And if you're going to take a motion to adjourn, you have to put a date certain. So
Right.
I would just want to make sure, that's why I wanted to make sure everybody understood the deadline is fast.
I did say a date certain, didn't I? 26th?
Yeah, but I'm just trying to, because I know that Ms. Whitehead is saying that she thinks she can make the deadline for the 12th, but I just want to make sure we're all clear.
Yeah, but the questions are gonna have time to.
I'm gonna say
review
October
the
26th.
I'm sorry,
I-
but
October 26th.
Because the question is that we have to have time then to review whatever is submitted and.
So is there a motion to adjourn this to,
Well, is anything gonna be submitted? Okay, let's see. Go ahead. Go ahead.
is there a motion to adjourn this to public hearing for October 26th at 6:30? Trustee Patino, second, trustee DeRosa, all in favor?
and could we just make sure we have the deadline, the submission deadline on the record, so everybody's clear?
So what's the Monday?
What's the Monday before that?
The 18th.
The
So only a
18th,
week. You only get the same week regardless of when you have the meeting.
okay, 18?
Yep.
But
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Let's go back to the other public hearing. Has anyone appeared for that?
I have answers for you.
First, before you give us the answer, has the applicant appeared, Alyssa? So I'm just going to adjourn this also.
You can't proceed unless the applicant is here.
Right, so is there a motion to adjourn this to October 12th? Trustee DeRosa, second, trustee Sullivan, all in favor? So that's adjourned to that.
I'm sorry, it's just he's asking for waivers and
Yeah, can I just for the record, that the 2 units that were going to be undersized are going to be 447 square feet and 449 square feet. And then the impervious coverage is 40% is required, 67.8% is current existing conditions. And because they're planning to pave that parking lot, it would be increased to 91.7%.
Would they be able to do something with that parking lot other than something that would be more pervious? Well, we'd have to ask him.
Right.
Pretty significant. I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll talk about this next time, but that's.
yeah, that's why he needs to be here.
But those are the last remaining, really, the remaining items is the parking and the other 2 waivers.
And if you can't come to an agreement and he wants to take, if you can't come to agreement on the waiver and he wants to take this to the zoning board, then you'd have to adjourn and let him go and seek that. So I just want to make sure that he receives his due process, and it's impossible to proceed without the applicant here. I apologize because I know that he's been anxious to move this forward, and I'm not really sure what happened, but I can't, yeah.
Okay, let's move to our discussion items. Consider a resolution approving installation of maintenance shed in Memorial Park. I think we have a memo from Jennifer Dorman explaining the need for the shed. I don't know, Richard, if you could shed any more light on this. You can put any more light on this.
Yeah, so this is a request to put to install a shed down at the Memorial Park, and it would give additional storage area for some of the park maintenance equipment. and also for some of the actual recreation equipment. We have received bids or prices for both the installation of the pad, and we have an upset price for the shed. So at this point, we would like to go forward, and we will, subject to council's verification that we've complied with the procurement policy, which we believe we have because of the scarcity of the.
Any other questions for Richard regarding this matter?
Yeah, there's a number of sheds shown.
Right.
And are we to understand that it's the last sheet 27 of 555 in the agenda packet?
But it's got a price on it.
27, 28, 29, no, it's not really, it's not clear which shed
I don't have
is the proposed shed, and then it's also not clear where this would go.
I think Lisa has an answer for you.
Oh,
I just know that the shed that's proposed is that one. Yeah.
that one, okay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have any doors on it.
It would have, I think, 2 garage doors and a side door.
Do we know what those would look like? Is there anything else?
I think they were trying to go for in the other color photographs, there's an off-white shed with red trim. That's also a 2-door garage, 1 small door, 1 large door, and a side door.
This one?
Yes.
So
they were trying to find that.
corrugated metal.
It's a storage shed.
No, I know. I just, we have I would like to see the shed be discreet, and if not discreet, then attractive.
I think they were thinking of doing green so that at least it would fade into the greenery and it's going to be in the location of the container. There's currently a container that's there containing the equipment now.
And this is the container that's on the VFW site, or?
No.
It's
It's behind the Little League.
Yeah.
The back fence next to the porta potties.
Okay.
If you're not happy with the night, we can put it over and.
No, I want them to have, I think it's a perfectly legit thing. They should do the fence. I just want to locate it somewhere and make sure we get the right one so that we don't have an eyesore for 25 years.
No, I agree. And
Right, I
I
agree.
know the Little League has requested in the past, and again, I think recently, that they want to be able to have some storage there too. So I think if we're doing something, I'm not saying that we should share storage space, but if we're going to put something there or consider that, maybe we should consider it at the same time. So we are doing something that looks and feels nice, or if we're not doing it, we're not doing it. But I think it's something that we should consider at the same time.
I think the board should, or at least, somebody the board designates should see the final design. Shipping containers are ugly, and this is replacing the shipping container, but as Mike said, it's going to be permanent or semi-permanent as opposed to a container which you can pick up. I would also just have a concern that if the Little League is going to store things in a shed where the DPW is storing stuff, that it's in space that's segmented. Or
I
you're
wasn't-
shaking your head no.
You could allow that.
I wasn't
Okay.
suggesting that we share with the Little League, because I get that it's village property and village equipment, and I don't think we want to give access to non-village employees,
Correct.
but I just know that they're making a request for something, so if we're going to consider it or allow it, it has to be kind of in conjunction with this, or otherwise we're not going to allow it because there's no other room. I don't know. I know there's been an issue with the Little League, and that's the main field for our Little League is Memorial.
So I don't think we're against having a storage facility or shed, but I think we are concerned about the look and the location of it, especially since it's going to store records. So we want to make sure it does have doors and better protection. So
That's just temporary. So it's equipment. It's really DPW equipment to maintain the fields. That's the permanent.
Yeah, you can't store records in a non-conditioned space, which is what this is. I'd be happy to meet with Jan or Steven there later this week or early next week and try to help out where I can.
Sure. I think they were going for the sort of least expensive storage option. And I know they tried a number of sources and we're not getting calls back. There's a supply issue. But for sure, I'll let them know.
So why don't I just put this over until next time?
Is there space available? Do you know if we wanted to like put plantings around it or something, if it is not a great looking shed? Just an idea.
Yeah, we should have taken a picture of the corner, but if you can envision, the baseball diamond is here. There's some porta potties, and right behind it is a container. So it'd come out a little bit wider. It would double the size of the container, basically, but it's still in that back corner.
It'll be better looking than the container.
Yeah.
Well, the container's painted and has like
Yeah.
wording on it. I mean, it actually doesn't look that bad where it is. I understand it's not big enough, but it doesn't look bad.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put this over until the next time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
before you move into the next item, there was someone that asked on the screen if we skip courtesy of the floor because we were offline, and there might be people online that needs to.
There is somebody with their hand raised.
You did it earlier, but maybe.
Okay. Right, so let's just make, before I just do anything, I can make sure we're doing this. So action item number one, we're going to adjourn until the next meeting. Okay, let's go to courtesy of the floor.
Lee? Lee, can you hear us?
Hi, Lee Constantine. Thank you for acknowledging my chat.
Hey, we need an address.
Stanley Dobbs. I'd like to just ask a question about the Con Ed issue down there. I know that the developer back in the findings was supposed to put in some underground Con Ed and do the upgrade and remove the poles on the street. Is that still viable or has that been dismissed?
It's not been dismissed. The last I've checked with the building department, and the last, and I know we're gonna go back and forth on this, but I thought it was a question of access to the facility, the property on Stanley, so that they could check lines and turn things off before they start stuff. So I know you're going to say probably that haven't heard anything from Con Ed, right?
Right, we haven't heard any more from the developer. We were in negotiations with Corey Rabin, and it was almost all set that we were gonna sign the agreement, and he never followed up. And this is right prior to the pandemic. I think it was that December. And that was the last we heard from him. So I don't know what happened with it. And we responded, we asked questions. I think you've been copied on that as well, but there's been no response, and it's a year and a half more.
Well, I have to see the extent of what the village, I mean, I don't know, the site plan, I think requires it, but I'm not sure about
Yes.
that. So we will, again, I'll look into it. I know the building department, I thought was waiting for you to do something, but I will.
No, we're waiting for them. I mean, I can forward emails if I, get to them to see where we all left off. But I think it's a matter of village following up with them because they're bound by it, by the contract or the findings or the sign off of everything. So, I mean, we're sort of the third party here.
I'm going to ask you to
more
forward.
proactive ones.
Forward the chain of emails to village administrator and myself, and we'll go from there.
Okay, and because I understand also now that they want to put I know there's some shrubbery that they've taken out that was part of the screening, and some of it has turned brown. And I haven't seen any replacements there on the easement. And now I know that they're looking to do some sort of Tesla boxes to put right outside there.
Yeah, I got the notice also that they want to put those charging stations there. So-
Right, and we were kind of wondering why they wouldn't put it in that empty space on the southwest corner of the garage, which is empty. I think it just houses a back
Lee, I don't think the Board of Trustees is, well, maybe we are, because it is our site.
They'll
plan.
probably come to us.
Your
at some point.
site will
We don't
come
have
to
that, we don't have that
eventually.
information yet, so.
Yeah. I mean, I did get a letter because I live close enough to it. I did get the notice that there is an intent to put that in there. But,
Right.
yeah, well, those questions you could certainly raise when it's on the agenda. But for the
They
question
just,
that,
they just rejected that at the AHRB last night, so.
They didn't finally reject it.
No, they
don't
asked them
like
for changes.
They don't like it so much because then we asked about the noise and then we asked if those boxes, the electric boxes would be noisy. And they said, well, it does have a humming. So we're concerned that it's 20 feet off to the house and with sleeping, and how do you deal with that? So
okay,
that's another.
that's not on the
concern.
agenda tonight. It will be on
No.
the agenda, so we'll address that. But for your concern about the lighting, I mean, the Con Ed issue, we'll take a look at that.
Right, and we're also concerned about that I put in emails too with regards to the electric, there on both sides of the house, the adjacency with the light trespass. We addressed that many, many times over the years and nothing's been done about it.
All right, you know what, I think since we have like, Richard is kind of new to the issue, if you could send him the email chain and he can take a look at it. Thanks. Okay,
Okay,
thank you, Lee, and you can call in again if nothing's happening.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's move to item number 2, consider a resolution authorizing the interim village administrator to enter into an agreement with Recycle Right, community recycle application. We do have a letter from Jennifer Dorman dated September 24th, 2021, explaining the situation along with a pamphlet from Recycle Right. Is there anything you'd like to add to this, Richard?
No, I mean, it's self-explanatory. I think it's going to be an application that will be a benefit for the residents and the businesses. They'll be able to look online and schedule pickups for particular items. And it'll also give the department on this side an opportunity to reach out for emergency notices, or if they want to give a heads up in terms of a change of garbage pickup or recycling or other issues. And they'll be able to do it to an isolated area when that's possible, as opposed to just a blanket email all over the community.
And the cost of the app is $3,500, but I understand that we can be reimbursed for half that. Is that correct?
Right.
Is there a cost to people who get this app on their phones? Is it a cost to the residents or is it?
No, there's no cost.
Okay.
That's a good question. Very good question. Okay, so.
I just want to make a comment to say this is great, and we should be doing more of this kind of thing to bring, some of our communications into the 21st century. It just helps everybody, so that people aren't scratching their heads every time there's a holiday week or something else that changes schedules.
Okay, so is there a motion to authorize the village administrator to enter into this agreement with Recycle Right? Trustee Sullivan, second trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Consider a resolution setting a public hearing for the project at 185 Ashford Avenue after review of referral memo from planning board for site plan approval.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think your planner will comment on that as well.
Okay,
Howard.
So I have the plans up, if there's any questions. But just in terms of seeker process, there is a resolution tonight to declare yourself as lead agency. This action is an unlisted action and they have provided a part 1 EAF form. There are 3 items or actually 2 items specifically that they need to follow up on. That deals with threatened and endangered species. The site has been identified as potential threatened or endangered species of bald eagles. And then the other is construction. The applicant should provide additional information on the construction impacts, including daily truck trips and truck routes, because that would be important, especially concern of the neighborhood. This project also came up as a potentially archaeologically sensitive area. However, this site, as you know, has already been previously disturbed. And so therefore, I'm not recommending that consultation with SHPO is really necessary. But in terms of the recommendation from the planning board did give a positive recommendation. However, they do have 3 specific recommendations that they would like for the village board to consider. First is that the applicant would address to the full satisfaction of the village engineer all outstanding stormwater engineering issues raised in the documents that have been submitted. to the planning board, including the July 29th engineering review letter, which was attached to your package. Also, the applicant proposes to unbundle its off-street parking spaces. And so while unbundling the off-street parking spaces is fine in terms of if renting them to their own residents or the owners of the retail spaces, the real issue comes into play when the applicant is proposing to actually rent them to the neighborhood at large. And that is actually considered a parking non-accessory use in your zoning code, and that is not allowed in the DT district. So the planning board is recommending that if for some reason the village board is interested in pursuing the unbundled parking, allowing for the renting of spaces to persons other than the occupants of that particular site, that they consider amending the zoning code. And then the third recommendation from the planning board is that they are in favor of providing on-street parking spaces, which are identified on the site plan for this particular project. Now, I just want to note, they are not required as part of the applicant fulfilling their parking spaces. They do have adequate parking on site. However, the planning board does support the proposed parking spaces in Ashford Avenue, but they are recommending that the village board request additional details on the width of Ashford Avenue and the current drive lanes to make sure that the proposed parking would be able to easily be installed and there wouldn't need to be modification to the striping or the roadway.
I have a question about the unbundled park. We can't do that with the waiver. We'd have to actually have a code change.
Well, that's a use, and that would require a code change. Your waivers really focus on area changes as opposed to use changes.
Now, if we were considering to have a code change on the bundled parking, would we be able to still approve this site plan with the condition that if we can get the code changed, that they would be able to do it, or do we have to have the code changed first?
So the unbundled parking, if they choose to do unbundled parking for the occupants of the site, that is permissible. It's just the actual renting to others off-site.
So we can do that after
for
the
years.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, until the
We've been
project's
trying to
done.
get this done. for a
So
while.
so as long as we have that code change in place by the time they're trying to rent, then I.
By the
think
time
we're
they're
okay.
renting, great, okay,
So I
that's
think
what, that's what
something
I
we can
wanted to
work on
know,
over
so
the
we don't
next-
have to, we don't have to like rush to do this before we approve the site.
No.
Got it, good, thank you.
I would also just ask, the off-site parking on Ashford was yet another suggestion by, I believe, this board or part of the joint meetings. And so at some point, we did ask the applicant to have a look at it, but I understand that there is a question of the roadway. And I don't know if that's something that you can take a look at and comment on, or if you already have. But that would be, I think, valuable.
We can take a look at that and we'll follow up with the applicant if there's additional information needed.
And I'm not sure if you can add on-street parking spaces without a local law. So again, we would have to include in any language of an approval resolution, should it occur, that,
But we'd have to change the parking regulations on Ashford. to allow that.
that's what I'm saying, and that can only be done by local law.
Well, I just want to set in motion some of these things that we've
works,
found to
yeah.
be desirable, but not necessarily sort of necessary before the approval.
Yeah, and you can have engineering input and, in terms of, I think Valerie has a traffic engineer on staff, so you can certainly, you have time to get input on that.
Yeah.
Because you're just setting the public hearing tonight and also declaring yourselves lead agency because if you recall, you passed this along as a concept and it is now morphed into this project, which I think you would all agree is a much better project than when it appeared first. So this proves that the joint public meetings with all three of the boards was beneficial to the village as a whole.
Okay, so is there a motion to declare our Dobbs Ferry Board of Trustees as the lead agency for the environmental review of the project under the state secret? And is there a motion to, as part of the same motion, to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 at 6:30. Trustee DeRozzi, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? That's unanimous.
You have the applicant and.
Okay, thank you. I would have known. Let's move to discussion item number 4 is to consider a resolution setting a public hearing for the project at 100 Danforth Avenue. Have to review the referral memo from the planning board for site plan approval. And I guess, Valerie, it's you again.
Yeah, I just, this is a very easy one. It was a type 2 under seeker, so there's no further action needed by this board. The county referrals were conducted. It was just a notification. So notification was received from the county in August and no further action from the village on that. And the planning board did provide a recommendation, and their only minor recommendation is that the applicant needs to address to the full satisfaction of the village engineer all outstanding stormwater and engineering issues.
Are you here for that?
I am, Mayor. Good evening. Brad Schwartz from Zarin Steinmetz on behalf of the Danforth Apartments. So we would ask the board to schedule a public hearing, and I don't want to be presumptuous about the outcome here, but this is a 1,000 square foot patio. Valerie did acknowledge it was a simple application. The board would also authorize staff, in addition to schedule the public hearing, to authorize a resolution to be ready for your consideration that same night. That would be our additional request.
Okay.
Yes, planning board didn't have any problems with this.
Okay, so is there a motion to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, at 6:30 to address this issue? Trustee Tino, second. Trustee Casal, all in favor? It's done.
And would you like to have a resolution prepared in advance for your consideration should you vote to approve?
Yes. Thank you for being patient.
Valerie and I will work on that resolution.
Next one also, huh?
Very busy man.
Okay, discussion item number 5 is to consider a resolution setting a public hearing for the project at Masters School, 49 Clinton Avenue. Why don't you start first?
With respect, same request. And the master school in particular really is hoping to break ground this year and to at least get the site work and the foundation in place. And my understanding is the building department does not begin to review building permit applications until all approvals are issued. So given the time of year that we're in, it's really important to match as possible. Again, assuming all goes well at the public hearing, to receive approval on October 12th. So Mayor and trustees, if you would again authorize staff to have a resolution just ready for your consideration that night, it could really greatly facilitate getting masters started this year.
Okay, Valerie?
Sure. This application, the applicant has been very responsive to all consultant comments. This board has declared itself lead agency. The applicant has provided an EAF Part 1, and there were 3 items that we asked the applicant to follow up on, and one was dealing with endangered species. Consultation with New York State DEC was undertaken. We received an email from the DEC stating that basically all the threatened or endangered species really were related to the Hudson River and not related to this particular project. The archaeology associated with this project, it is contiguous to Esterwood and Carriage House, and it is within an archaeologically sensitive area. The applicant again undertook consultation with SHPO, and in response to a letter that was provided, and it's also all part of your packet, that SHPO concluded that the project would not have an adverse impact on the historic or archaeological resources of the site. In addition, we asked the applicant for additional information on construction, specifically dealing with the daily truck trips as well as the queuing, just to make sure and to confirm that no construction vehicles would be queuing along Clinton Avenue. And that was, they confirmed that, and they provided additional information as to the truck trips. So at this point in time, because they responded to everything adequately dealing with the environmental impacts, I did provide this board EAF Part 2, which basically goes through each and every impact that's identified in the Part 1. And if you look at the Part 2, basically I identified all of the various impacts as either small or no impact, except for two items, and that dealt with the excavation as well as the construction. And that's on page 1 of the environmental assessment form part 2. And that I identified as moderate to large impact and really more on the moderate side. But the applicant, again, is proposing mitigation wrapped into the overall site plan. So I do think that it would be no significant adverse impact on the overall project. So if this board agrees, and the only further recommendation that they just wanted to identify was just dealing again with the stormwater and any outstanding village engineer issues. That's it.
I just have one thing, and this has, there's no requirement for this. You know, I'm gonna ask Brad, because people from the neighborhood have come to me again about this. There's no requirement. It will not impact on the decision-making at all. Since you're gonna have all that equipment there and all that concrete, can you give a little thought to perhaps the sidewalk in Esтерwood? Again, just think, I'm not asking you for an answer. I'm just throwing it out there because it's been asked of me.
So I appreciate the comment. It's come up before. If it's appropriate, perhaps I could have Masters have a conversation with the village administrator, council, and we could perhaps work on responding to that comment in a fashion that's appropriate.
Again, it's not, nothing's
Understood, it's
contingent
not
on that.
contingent on the approval, but in terms of being good neighbors, perhaps it's something that we can discuss.
Yeah, for purposes of economies of scale, they'll have equipment there and supplies there. So
Right, yeah.
we can pursue it directly.
That'll be great. Thank you.
And just for edification purposes, I do know that in an effort to expedite the site, the building plans, once you move forward, I believe Masters is paying to have outside consultant to do this, so it doesn't overburden your building department. These are quite extensive and plans. So I think that the applicant has voluntarily agreed to pay the extra money it will take to have them done by an outside entity.
Both with respect to reviewing the plans for issuance of the building permit, as well as also for a field inspector during construction.
Great. That will certainly take the burden off your building department, especially as a way to expedite to move it forward.
Okay. So thank you, Valerie, for that. We're going to need you to do that again on October 12th. But,
Well, would you like me to work with Lori Lee on a negative declaration?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. So is there a motion to have a public hearing scheduled for Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 at 6:30 to receive public comment and consider a request for site plan approval for the project on the Master School campus at 49 Clinton Avenue? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously.
Terrific.
Would you like to have?
Yes.
Okay. Valerie and I will work together to have a resolution prepared for your consideration. Thank you, Brad.
See you on the 12th. Good night.
Thank you.
Discussion item number 6 is a discussion, and I can't even pronounce it. So our birthday celebration on 2023. How many years is that?
Lisa was in charge of it.
How many years is that?
150.
150. Okay. So what do you want to discuss?
So, I mean, we've just discussed it very, functionally internally, and these things have a habit of sort of creeping up on you, and all of a sudden it's here already. So we just thought we would bring it up in a conceptual way, basically to throw it to you all. We pulled the magazine from the last centennial celebration. It gives some indication of who the participants were. Names may have changed, but the affiliations may be similar. So basically, just to, maybe not tonight, but to start the thought process or the discussion process, maybe you want to start to form a core committee to identify a larger committee that's going to take on the responsibilities. You have any number of opportunities to have different festivals, a big event, maybe. There's a number of opportunities that you can do, but you start small and build up from there. So just sort of plant the seed. And if you will want to maybe talk about it internally or this evening, just to get it started, maybe with a core group of 3 or 4 people, and then branch out into maybe 15 or something like that for a committee.
It's a good idea to get it started. So
Yeah, I think fundraising would be one of the major issues, and I know we can't do that as a board, but we need an entity in which to do that.
Oftentimes it's a citizens group, so they have the ability to do.
Again, just put it out there for our citizens.
You actually normally set up a separate Centennial committee to take on that responsibility.
Can the village, I asked this to Jeff, and he gave me some information about it, but we're saving money. We didn't have the fireworks this year. Is there some way we can, whatever money is left over?
I mean, whatever's left over at the end of a budget year goes back into your, fund balance or your contingency fund. So, you can certainly put monies aside, but you're gonna come up to your next budget cycle before you even know it. So there's an opportunity to fund it at that time. And at the end of the year, all things being equal, if you end up the year in a surplus, then you have the opportunity just to put that money to different, options. Right now, it's to start thinking about how you want to do it, how you want to get it off the ground, who are the prime players, who wants to volunteer to want to start up a core committee, and then reach out and decide who the key players are. You have Chamber of Commerce, you have, if you have some ministry representatives, if you have a local service clubs.
Historical society.
We have an historical society.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry?
Historical society.
Yeah, oh yeah, big time. Yeah, we had a whole sheet, we were sort of brainstorming about it,
Okay, so if you could send us the sheet of, what do you think, suggestions of who should be on it? We can go from there. Then we could pick 3 people.
We'll send that out.
I'd like to add a discussion item number 7. I think trustee Nell wanted to have a discussion regarding the Phoenicia flea. So could you, Christy, just give us a very brief summary of it? And I think you've been discussing it with our legal counsel, Laura Lee, so she could also give us her opinion on it.
Yes, so we had asked, I'm not sure how long ago, when Richard first started, to look into farmers markets and what we could do to improve and have a more exciting farmers market experience for our residents in Dobbs. And he did some research and found that it would be tough to find an entity to produce a farmers market in Dobbs on Fridays because of all of the strong ones that happen on either side of that on Saturdays and Sundays and Wednesdays, and that possibly we might want to consider some other kind of market that would be attractive to our residents as an outdoor thing to do, and maybe a flea market could be something that would solve that. And so I proposed that, or mentioned that, to the downtown committee. And there's a flea market called Phoenicia Flea that's a traveling flea market, started in Phoenicia, New York, but they come and pop up a flea market in all sorts of different places. They've gone to San Francisco, they've gone into Arizona and hotels. So they're professional flea market pop-up people, and they have a selection of Hudson Valley vendors that they work with on the regular. They come with tents and tables. They charge a vendor fee for doing that, and then they clean up after themselves. They're basically like, a team of people that produce flea markets, and they're more like handmade goods than like antiques and stuff. So the downtown committee connected with the Phoenicia Flea people and asked if they'd be interested in doing one here in October. And they said they could make that happen. Our waterfront is nice, and they think they could get the vendors that would make it a good experience. How they work, though, is they traditionally charge a fee to whoever is asking them to bring the market to them. And oftentimes this is a brand or business who's trying to get an experience that people want to go to at their company. And so that fee is normally $37.50. He charges that fee, and then their business is also collecting this not as large fee for the vendors because it's shared with whoever's bringing the flea there. We initially were like, okay, well, we're a municipality, we're not a brand, we're not looking to like, make huge profit over whoever's coming. We're just trying to create an experience for our residents. And so they came down to 2,500. And that basically helps ensure that they are covered for the staff that is required to clean up after the flea and set it up. So my question to Lori Lee was whether or not that's something that we could ever do, because it's not a nonprofit entity, they're a for-profit entity, but they would be bringing an experience that we were hoping to do for our residents in terms of flea markets. And so that's my question. That was my question for Lori Lee. And she thought I was asking just about the use of the property, and I'm asking about the use of the funds to create this thing that we were hoping to do for our residents.
You want to expand upon it?
Sure. I've been working with Christy and doing some research in terms of not running afoul of that classic, as you know, the constitutional prohibition against offering resources, the village resources. We did discuss that the meaning behind this is to provide an opportunity for the village, and also we discussed that the Phoenicia Flea people were specifically bringing vendors with crafts and handmade goods and makers, and that they would be willing to talk to our local food establishments about also vending at this location. So it would be an opportunity to promote the local food businesses as well.
Yeah, I
And-
missed that part because he doesn't normally deal with food vendors. It's mostly product, because that just adds a level of complexity. And plus, like most of the places he goes to has food in somehow nearby. And so he said that if we could limit it to Dobbs food vendors, that would be a great pull and make it more, local, and it would be good for us. So he was really into that idea, and we'll be happy to, provide them with the tent and table that they need to do a simple setup. But they would still have to pay a vendor fee for that tent and table setup and takedown, because it would be done for them.
Right.
But it would
Christy,
only
would they-
be open.
And it's also a turnkey process, as Christy has explained, unlike the river market that we have offered in the past. There's no use of police and DPW, that they come, set up, break down, and there's no additional overtime involved or staffing involved on the day. So there was also, as Christy has mentioned, they're willing to reduce their fee to reflect the fact that we're a not-for-profit municipal corporation. So I saw ways of promoting this to your benefit, and also promoting this and in explanation of in your resolution. You can describe it in a way that you don't run afoul of the constitutional issues.
Christy, they'll allow food, which is fine because we do so many great restaurants here. Would they allow local artists? Because we've got a huge artist community here. Would they allow any of them to be vendors there for a fee or not?
I don't see why not. I mean, he was totally open to making it more Dobbs centric, and however we were hoping to do that. Like his job is to set up, take down, and then have vendors at the ready that could come. So that's really what he brings to the table. If we have additional vendors that we'd want to include, then that would be part of what we tell him we want. So
That would be a great opportunity for some of the artists in town, I would think.
Right. And
Well, maybe River Arts, for example, might.
Yeah.
You
we
know,
can work
let's
through
see.
River Arts to
Yeah.
get the word out if necessary. And also, I just wanted to point out that we're talking about an event that would be in a particular location on site, and it does not preclude the use of the park or the parking lot or to the public at large. We're not declaring this exclusive use by a for-profit entity. So that
What
all,
date are we looking at?
oh, I don't know that. we got
October
that.
16th or 15th, that weekend. So that's
October
why
15th?
we added it tonight, is because he said he could do it soon before it gets cold if we wanted to
Can we
do it.
vote on this tonight without having,
Resolutions?
yeah, Laura Lee, can I vote on this? Can we vote on this tonight without having a resolution?
Can I make two comments, Vinny, just real quick? One is, there would be some expenses associated. I don't see how you would have a major crowd. And I don't want to speak for the chief, but I'd be very surprised if he wouldn't bring some extra officers on. That's a manageable cost, I assume. The other thing is, Christy, how confident are you that these guys could pull this off in 2 weeks?
Oh, totally. I mean, like they have like a regular rent, like a lineup of what they do with this, and they have a whole system for marketing and everything. So they would be marketing it themselves. I mean, producing it and making it happen. He already said he had 10 vendors who would say they would do it. So I don't have any doubt he would pull it off.
Yeah, and again, if this was an initial event, with the thought that your local businesses and artisans could get an idea of the inner workings of this kind of event, that we could expand it to include more local as you went, if you were going to produce this event more than once.
I also think, I mean, like I see it as a pilot almost, because I think that the downtown committee could help take this over. And if it was something that worked and that we liked, they would work to get sponsors to cover that kind of fee or figure out a different way to execute. They're also looking into that now. So there is a chance that some nice soul business in Dobbs Ferry could cut the village a check to help support it. But like, you know, everyone's kind of, are we on board with this or not? How far are we going? But some residents have been looking into helping absorb some of that cost.
Because this is like a pilot to see whether we'd like it or not. We're not committing to anything future. This is
Right.
just providing an event this year because we've had so few events.
I'm just concerned with the timing of it, getting this up and running in such a short amount of time.
I just have a question for Christy, considering that this is an outdoor event, which sounds wonderful. What would happen with if we have bad weather?
Everybody cries. I'm not sure. I don't think we have an alternate date. I think they're rain or shine, and they have tents.
Oh,
Like
okay.
they're all tented. Like each individual place is tented. So, and then the space that he wanted to do was like around where the performance, the stage is. So there's big trees there. I don't know. I think it would have to be rain or shine. There's too many other things happening right around that time.
Now, what else do we have? We give them a fee and this doesn't come off. So we pay them afterwards.
That's gonna be in the contract, I'm sure.
Great, yeah, and what you would do is authorize entering into a contract for a fee not exceeding $2,500 for the pilot of this opportunity, of village event opportunity, and then we would look at, you know, whatever their standard form is, and they provide us with evidence of insurance and vending and all of the appropriate licenses. But again, there's no food vendors, so we don't need that additional layer initially.
I think the only other thing I would say is it should be subject to the final approval of the village administrator, because, for example, certain kinds of tents are very difficult to set up at the waterfront because the irrigation system, you can't use spikes. They're just a bunch of little details like that Richard, I would think you and the DPW and the chief would want to make sure that we're ironed out quickly.
So could we like approve this tonight with the provision that the DPW, police and village administrator are all on board, or how do we do that?
You can authorize the execution of an agreement to the satisfaction of the village administrator's office, absolutely. And if it's possible to involve the local people quickly, yes. Otherwise, it's a pilot and it serves as a symbol of what can be done. And
Christie, the following week out of the question, like the 22nd or 23rd?
That's the River Arts.
That's River Arts Studio.
Arts, yeah.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I think I don't know, for some reason, the 9th and the 16th were the dates that they had originally talked about, but I don't see that, especially if River Arts is happening, I don't see that that's a bad thing either, because everyone would be out and about doing stuff.
Yeah, it's just one more stop, but, all right, so why don't we authorize this and condition?
Spending, I think, is the question right now.
So is there a motion to authorize the village administrator to enter into an agreement with Venetia Flea or its subsidiaries to put forth a event on village property on October 16th or 23rd, subject to the approval of the village administrator and the village attorney? Is there a motion? Trustee Nell. Second, trustee Grazi, all in favor? That passes unanimously.
And just as a caveat, you should include that it,
Oh,
that
not
for
to
a fee
exceed.
not to exceed $2,500.
For a fee not to exceed $2,500.
Thank
Thank you, Christie.
Thanks, guys.
We're almost to the end. Is there a resolution authorizing a step increase for Assistant Building Inspector John Stone? I think there's a memo that is included in that, and Richard, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is the annual, regular annual increase, which is in accordance with your step contract that's in place. With recommendation of the department heads in both cases.
Let me see what it is. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the budget step increase for John Stone to move to grade 14, step 3, $80,943.42 as of August 15, 2021? Trustee Sullivan, second, trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Action item number 7 is to resolution authorizing a step increase for DPW Senior Office Assistant Jennifer Dorman. We have a memo from Steve Trezor, the DPW General Foreman. Again, Richard, do you want to shed any more light on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same situation. It's the annual increase and it's in accordance with your established step increase schedules.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve a raise to grade 12, step 5, which would be $82,471.12? Trustee Sullivan, second, trustee Casal, all in favor? That passes unanimously. And now we have a resolution to approve the audit of claims as submitted and recommended by the village treasurer. I don't know if he's present. No? Okay. I'm assuming this is what we normally do. So is there a motion to approve the audit of claims as submitted and recommended by the village treasurer? Trustee Taylor, second, trustee Sullivan, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Now we move to the minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting, which I assume was September 14th, 2021?
Mr. Mayor, the minutes are not on this agenda for approval.
I'll withdraw that motion. Let's go to the trustee liaison reports. Traffic committee.
Hi. We had a good traffic committee meeting last week, and they reviewed the plans that the engineers made for Storm Street in Ashford to make that more safe for pedestrian crossing. And so they're making some revisions based on their discussion. That's about it.
Conservation Advisory Board.
Let's see. They are looking forward to the tree code change that was, I think, will be on our agenda for the next meeting. Is that right? I'm not sure. They have a number of new trees that they're going to be planting at Chauncey Park. They're looking to additionally to do some revitalization during woods following the storm and a lot of down trees. Them. They are welcoming 2 new members, which we approved, I think, at our last meeting.
Did I miss a resolution here? I have as a handout, a resolution of the Village of Dobbs Ferry Board of Trustees authorizing the mayor to sign the First Amendment to Urban County Corporation Agreement.
Yeah, it was like a late starter, so I can just explain that.
You just need to take a motion to amend the agenda to add it, if that would be good.
So is there a
Otherwise, I'll
motion?
get the hairy eyeball from Liz.
Is there a motion to add to the agenda, I guess, resolution number 9, authorizing Lee to sign the First Amendment to the Urban County Cooperation Agreement. Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee DeRosa, all in favor? That is added as action item number 9, and if you could talk about that.
Sure, you're already, of course, a member of the Urban County Consortium. A regulation and requirement came down from the federal government, from HUD, that they wanted this particular compliance paragraph spelled out with greater particularity. So it's just really reciting all of the laws that you're required to be in compliance with and that were alluded to previously in the same paragraph, but now it's very specific.
Okay, so since I don't think anyone else has it, I'm just going to just read the conclusion of it that says, whereas it is now necessary for the Village of Dobbs Ferry to execute an amendment to meet the requirements as set forth in the notice, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor to execute the First Amendment for Urban County Cooperation Agreement with the County of Westchester to meet HUD mandates for participation in the CDBG program for fiscal year 2022-2024. Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Casal, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Tree Commission. No one has a report on that? I think we saw what they were doing, right? I mean, didn't we see the agenda, or was that the tree? AHRB?
Just the Tesla thing that we spoke about a minute ago. Rivertown Square wants to put Tesla charging stations, and the AHRB asked them for revisions. So I'm not sure if we see that in the end. Sounds like we would, because it's a site plan change, but that's the news.
So the AHRB was asking for more information. Is that what you're saying?
No, they weren't happy with the placement of it or something, and so they asked for revisions to their plan.
Ad hoc committee reports. Maura, I think you may have one.
Yes, we had a meeting, the Human Rights and Diversity Committee had a meeting on September 20th. We were very much looking forward to the presentation with NYU, which of course, as you announced earlier, it was postponed. I just saw an email from them today, right, Richard?
Yes.
So I will send an email to the committee and explain to them in more details. We also actually had a visitor from the library, and we are kind of reaching out to other members and institutions of the village to come and speak with us and introduce themselves to us, kind of trying to connect more with some of the different groups in the village. And we also were speaking about Hispanic Heritage Month, which is actually happening. But other than that, I also had a small meeting, a short meeting with Justin in reference to the PSA that the Dobbs Ferry Youth Services Council is working on, and our treasurer and I are investigating into the details of the allowment. So Alisa is helping with that. Thank you so much for this PSA. And we are having a meeting, continue to look for members of the committee. If anybody's interested, we're more than happy to have you. A lot of the youth, I guess, a lot of benefit from this program. So it'd be great that we get more people involved.
That is great. And I also got someone contacted me about joining the beautification committee. So maybe we can add to that as well. So that would be great.
And just
Go ahead,
informing
Donna.
affordable housing. They had a meeting last Thursday. I was not at that meeting, but you saw the consequences of that meeting in the memo that they sent. The terrific group. They've been doing a lot of work, a lot of research. They're very impressive. And they are currently working on some additional comments and input on the accessory dwelling unit law. So.
Okay. Anybody have any announcements? Okay, just as an announcement, I just want to reiterate.
Liz has
Liz
something.
has her off hand up.
I'm sorry, Liz.
I just want to say, last week, Elisa and I attended the NICOM Fall Training School. And the school is designed to provide a multitude of learning experiences for officials in a relaxed, interactive setting. There were more than 60 separate sessions on various aspects of municipal law, government operations, local finance, and professional development. On Tuesday morning, I was a panelist at a class for running meetings and taking minutes. During the instruction, NICOM General Counsel Wade Beltramo displayed the Village of Dobbs Ferry's website to the audience, showing how we post the agenda and link each item individually to the backup documentation. Mr. Beltramo told the attendees that what Dobbs Ferry is doing is the gold standard. This is a huge compliment. It was one of the many highlights of the training week. Also, during the training, I did receive my recertification as a registered municipal clerk, and I was also appointed as the first vice president of the New York State Association of City and Village Clerks. And next year, I will be appointed as the president. So that's. I wanted to thank Elisa for being a great travel mate and co-worker, and it was a great experience to have with her. And I want to thank the mayor, the board, and Richard for your support and for understanding the importance of continuing education and for allowing us to attend this invaluable training offered by NICOM.
Oh, certainly
Thank you.
it's well worth it, and I'm glad to hear that we're the gold standard and that you are the vice president.
That's a pretty huge compliment.
Congratulations to everyone, especially you, Liz, and thank you for taking the time out to go.
We certainly congratulate them, and Liz is of course now going to be a state representative. However, I would be remiss if I did not report that I'm following up on some reports that I got following the meeting. We'll be discussing that at a later date.
And we did circulate a lot of congratulations for Liz because it is a humongous honor. So we should have actually remembered that one, Liz. Thank you so much.
So when you become the president, is there some kind of a ceremony up there that we can all go to? And
There'll be a big ceremony.
And it'll be in Lake Placid next year.
Well, they canceled Lake Placid, so they're trying to find a new location.
oh, Lake Placid is one of my favorites.
Wow.
Okay. Great news. Any other announcements? Okay, I wanted just to highlight that on October 2nd, we will have a proclamation read, and I think an unveiling of a monument rock for Scotty at the football game. Yes.
You have a public input forum on the licensing options, the opt-out, opt-in licensing options under the state cannabis law. And that is Wednesday, the 6th, that's next Wednesday, the 6th at 7 o'clock. And we're looking for input from your residents and from entities and members of the public in general in terms of how you will be proceeding. As you know, you'll need to pass a local law, should you so choose, before December 30th.
Thank you for reminding me of that. That's very important. People are always just asking me about what's happening with the cannabis law, and we have already had a public forum on it. This will be our second public forum. So again, that's October 6th at 7 o'clock here and virtually. And I guess we're going to put it, if it's not already, on the website, right? Okay. There being no further, want to do the gavel? No, you do it.
Oh, I can do
Ready?
it. Okay, tell me when.
There being no further other business, is there a motion to close this meeting? Trustee DeRozzi, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor. Meeting is now closed. Great. Whoa.
Nice job.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Right.